Hey guys, before we kick things off today, I want to give a quick shout out to Zero Blog 30. Zero Blog 30 is our military podcast, as I'm sure most of you know. Obviously, Chaps, Kate, Cons, all great friends of the program, have done multiple snake drafts and whatnot. And today I met one of their guests from last week, actually. He was on their episode of Zero Blog 30 was on Tuesday, August 9th. Go listen to it. It's called, it's titled "The Deadliest Battle of Afghanistan War Inspires Hope for Marine and His Interpreter." I just wanted to make sure I directed everyone over to their podcast to get more information on Tom Schueman and his interpreter, Zach, the story we're going to get into today. And just overall, just kind of give them a shout out because they do so much for the men and women who serve this country. So just wanted to say that before we kick things off. I'm excited to have Tom in. I hope you guys go check out his book, and I hope you guys are as moved by his story as I was. Before we do, though, I do want to talk about the exclusive ticketing partner, Barstool Sports, Game Time. Game Time is a ticketing app that makes it easier than ever to score last-minute deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows, and they guarantee the lowest price. They cracked the code on how to score last-minute deals on last-minute tickets, and you can find MLB tickets for under $15 all in on Game Time. Yankees tickets as low as $14, Red Sox $14, Mets $13, Braves $14, Cubs $12. Name your team. Game Time has the hookup on deals for you to get out to the ballpark. And the best part is you get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time, the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, go to the account tab to create a login and redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Just simple as that, guys. You know, we've been talking about Game Time for pretty much all summer and months now, and it really is just my go-to app now. Whenever someone talks about tickets, I just hop on. It's simple. It's not some complex thing where you got to worry about plugging a bunch of numbers in and whatnot. So go check out the Game Time app if you're looking to get out to a concert or a baseball game or whatever. And I mean, hey, Bears preseason's underway, so if you want to go check out a game, there is that option as well. Okay, let's get into the interview. All right, Bang Bang, welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. I am joined in studio by Tom Schueman, who just wrote a book, local Chicago guy, Mount Greenwood, right?
Yep.
Mount Greenwood, and you are an active Marine, and you have an awesome story. You were on Zero Blog 30 last week, and I'm thrilled to have you in, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so are you the first guy from Mount Greenwood to ever write a book?
Mount Greenwood it's a special place. It is one of those places that it's a neighborhood that you don't usually leave, and but it's a neighborhood full of the best souls in this country, in this city, and so I had to get out, I had to get going, but it wasn't anything to do with the people there. I really truly believe the salt of the earth folks down there in Mount Greenwood. Probably no one's. I'm sure someone's wrote a book. By the way,
yeah.
There's a bunch of things and people are doing in Mount Greenwood that I can't do. I can't fix your plumbing. I can't run your electric.
1,000%.
I can't. I'm not a carpenter, and those are probably much more useful skills than me writing a book. So. Hats off to all my friends and family in Mount Greenwood.
Yeah, no, I just had to,
Did you have that question loaded?
I was just thinking about it. I was like, I wanted to just allude.
I was like, please don't laugh so much.
To how that's, No, absolutely. I completely agree. Salty. There's people over there, real Chicagoans. But, it just seemed like a funny way to kick us off here with considering all you've been through and what you're doing now. And writing a book, man. So
sure, I think people have the kind of same assumption about being a Marine.
Yeah,
jarheads. People are like, wait, Marines know how to read. Marines know how to write.
Yeah.
I often find that I've spent a lot of time with the other branches of service that Marines really do put a premium on reading, writing more than probably what an outsider looking in would kind of assume. Although there's this brutal joke that I do not find funny, not because I am like a sensitive guy. Like,
Yeah.
you know, again, where I grew up or whatever, I can get in there and you know, Jaron, my buddy JR is here with us. We were just talking about this on the way in. It's not that I can't deal with a good joke, but this just one that this idea that Marines like eat crayons is like this crayon joke. It's like, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
It's like actually like not funny, and for some reason, a lot of Marines kind of play into that joke. It's like I don't know why are we celebrating being idiots. Like so I don't know. But back to Mount Greenwood. What a place. Mount Greenwood Park is really where I grew up, at the park, in the alleys at Mount Greenwood. I was thinking about that today. It's like in that neighborhood, you grow up at the park and in the alleys.
Yep.
And I don't know how common that is to grow up in the alleys. Like we were in the alley all day playing basketball, hockey, getting in trouble, riding our bikes, just growing up in the alley, going up to the park. It's just a different way of life, but it was a good one.
Yeah, no, that was it, man. I grew up in the Hiawatha Park area, like Edison and Harlem, and very similar to Mount Greenwood. Actually, the parks, Hiawatha Park and Mount Greenwood Park, are identical.
Yeah.
Like the field, like, you know how
Sure.
they would build a bunch at a time and they would all design them the same. They're actually identical, but you couldn't be more spot on. Like that's where it all happens.
And that park, when I think about any of the resilience or kind of grit that I may or may not have, I think was formed at that park. You know, my Pee Wee football coach, my widget football coach, those guys, like you jump off sides, grabbing your face mask, whistle to the helmet, take a lap, you know, and
Yep,
it was
1,000%, dude.
took a lot of laps, you know, and at the end of practice, it'd be like, you'd be doing the suicide sprints and someone jumps off. All right, everybody take a lap. I took many laps around that park, and I think that was a very formative experience for me, and a really good one that you know built toughness and yeah, I would go on to have additional formative experiences at that park, but that was in high school, and that was when the cops would come, or fighting Carmel, Rita.
Yeah, exactly.
Every weekend it was Marist versus.
Yeah, just moving from Beverly Park to Mount Greenwood Park, whatever the cops weren't at.
Yeah.
Those were the days, man.
And
those were the days.
You've got like your big bruiser guy, and you're just gonna have him fight Rita's big bruiser guy, and it's like you spend all night just shaping up that fight.
Yeah,
and usually it just never happens. Those, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you just drive around in circles and circles until you're just told by every cop possible to go home.
Yeah, until they take all your beer.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I was thinking about this, you know, recently as well. It's like the cops in the early 2000s, every cop in Chicago must have had a fridge stocked full of beer,
dude,
and never would have to buy a beer their whole life.
No.
The amount of, I mean, it was usually like Busch Light or Natty Light. It wasn't, you know, but the amount of Busch Light that every cop in Chicago could have, they could have a lifetime supply.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in the same coin, it's like November 1st, those fucking cops may have well been making the biggest omelet in the world from all the eggs they'd take from us from Halloween.
I was telling JR the story on the way in. My wife just revealed to me within the last year that I would. My wife is my high school sweetheart. So
really?
Yeah, she went to Macaulay. I went to Marist.
Oh, look at that.
So over 20 years. But I always haven't always been the stand-up gentleman that I am today. And and sometimes I wouldn't invite her, you know, when I was having a party. And these parties were in my backyard. My mom's a cop, and so she had to work the night shift, but she didn't work it in my neighborhood, and she worked it in a different district. And I had a big above ground pool, classy, you know, and I'd have like 6 to 10 folks over, sitting behind the pool in my backyard, listening to a little Dave Matthews.
Yeah,
my friends are all getting stoned. We got a 30 rack. I mean, it was like very chill. It was
Yeah.
not some, it was these everybody has shags, this is 2000, 2004. It's just guys with shags listening to Dave Matthews smoking weed. Like that, like pretty chill vibe.
Yeah.
And quiet. We didn't have big Bluetooth speakers, anything, how we're listening to it is on, somebody's Razr phone or something. I don't know, like our MP3 player off a LimeWire. Somebody's got some music coming off that. And without fail, cops show up, every time. And I'm like, what is my neighbor's deal? Like, why does my neighbor hate me? Like, there's no way we're disturbing them. There's no way that it's awkward when the cops show up and your mom's a cop, because then it's like, are you going to tell my mom? I'm going to get grounded too. And I just lost all our beer, it's like, and for decades, I held animosity towards that neighbor for ruining so many nights. And I was telling someone this story, and my wife was listening. She was like, "Oh, that was me. I was calling the cops on you."
Oh, really?
I was like, "You son of a bitch.
That's tough.
You ruined my life." Like, you can't. Do you know how hard it is to get a case of beer when you're 16?
You're never getting that beer back.
You got to go stand outside a White Hen for an hour.
Yes.
Trying to bribe people with $15 to do a beer run for you.
Exactly.
And you work your ass off for that case of beer, and you're 4 beers into it. It's like, it's devastating to lose that.
When you lost it, and you worked so hard for that too, that would take hours sometimes to get someone to buy it.
There was no guarantee.
No, there was no guarantee.
You could be outside of White Hen all night.
That's fine. Yeah, like I said, like she could buy you those beers back now, but it wouldn't be the same. They were more valuable then. They were a lot more valuable.
A lot of beers, actually.
She does. You should always bring that up, Tom. Don't be afraid.
Okay.
So, did you always know you wanted to serve?
No, so I didn't. I remember some guys from Marist who knew that they wanted to join the Army or join the Marines. I was not that guy. I was not. I grew up with a single mom who's a Chicago cop, and it was like a little bit sensitive. I was wearing my Doors tie-dye T-shirt, and didn't. I was into what I was into is, this is a little bit nerdy, but I was into like law. So I would go to summer camps and study law, and I thought like that's what I would want to be. And then I wasn't like playing G.I. Joe. I didn't watch Apocalypse Now when I was a kid, or like Platoon. I wasn't watching any of this stuff. It wasn't. I just finished teaching at the Naval Academy, where every midshipman at the Naval Academy has this like long history of their dad and their dad's dad all were, and that just wasn't me. And but I was a sophomore when 9/11 happened, and they rolled the TV into the room, and it was really like, wait, there's people want to do bad stuff to America, like, and like I didn't. It was this age of innocence where you didn't realize that there were some bad folks out there, and and by the end of that day, it was a day of like. Was kind of scared, kind of confused. I just said, I'll do something about that. I don't know what I'm going to do about that, but I know I will do something about that. And then, so that was kind of my first call to service. And if you asked me that day, what are the 4 branches of the military? Like, I probably couldn't have told you. And by the time I was getting ready to go, so that was my sophomore year. By the time I was getting ready to go to school, my mom had sacrificed so much to afford opportunities for my sister and I that she had never dreamed of for herself. She was 19 when she had me, and she took a job she didn't necessarily want, but it had good benefits and good insurance. And so I thought, this lady who has no high school degree, who had, kids at 19, she works for 20 years and create something that, again, like that she could not have fathomed for herself. And I thought, that's something special. There's something about this country that if you work your ass off, you can create opportunities. And but that's not guaranteed. Someone has to continue to secure that dream. Someone has to continue to secure those liberties or those freedoms. Because if you think of America like a bank, if everybody just is taking the withdrawals and no one's putting the deposits in, it's not how things work. Someone has to go out there and continue to defend this way of life. And I thought, I've always been a guy that to think like, why don't you do it? Not somebody out there should take this thing for action. It's like, you should take it for action. And so I watched, my grandma was a big Tom Cruise fan, and she always had A Few Good Men playing. And so I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I thought, okay, you can be a lawyer and you could be in the service. That's what I'll do. And so I did ROTC up at Northwestern. I went to Loyola, and then I did my ROTC at Northwestern. And I was 1 week into my little boot camp up at Great Lakes Naval Base, and I was like, I'm not down with these sailors. I see how these Marines carry themselves, these Marines, how they look. That's the kind of guy I want to be like. And that was like my first step towards my being a Marine or whatever. And the issue was my mom was dead set against me joining. So, she had two rules. Don't join the military. Don't get a motorcycle. Got a motorcycle, crashed it, wrecked it, and then joined the military and had 14 years of pretty crazy career. And so every time I'd come home from Loyola, it'd be this knockout battle, because it was during Iraq. I was at Loyola 2004. It was like right in the heat of Fallujah, Ramadi, and my mom's like, "You're gonna go die for the oil." I'm like, "Mom, I just need a dryer sheet. Like, I gotta just do my laundry, go back to school.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. This oil or Donald Rumsfeld. I'm literally just trying to get this laundry in." And so yeah, I that's how I started on this road towards.
And then, so when is the first time you went over?
Yeah, I commissioned in 2008, and then I reported to basic school in like 2009, and then I reported to my unit late 2009, and I went to Afghanistan as a rifle platoon commander in 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. September of 2010 was when I landed.
So 2010, and the book primarily is about your relationship with Zach, right? Your interpreter?
Yeah.
And so when do you meet him?
Like within the first week. And so the book is centralized on friendship and family, and in the first couple of chapters, the book is a dual narrative. It's one chapter Zach writes, and the next chapter is by me, and so it flips between the two of us telling this story, and it starts with me in Mount Greenwood, and it starts with Zach in his Kunar province in Afghanistan, and then 9/11 puts us both on a trajectory to meet in 2010, and I'd been in Afghanistan for about a week at that time, and before going to Afghanistan, most people were trying to help us, like it's called counterinsurgency. They're trying to help us win the hearts and minds of the people. Like, you got to drink tea with the people, and you got to be really nice to everybody. And if we're nice enough, and if we drink enough tea, then everybody's going to want to be on the U.S. side. And that's kind of how I had been trained up to that point. And we got there, and I was on my first patrol, and I didn't even have half my platoon out of the base, and we got ambushed. And for the first 100 days, we were in 100 firefights. Every single day we'd go outside, we were in a firefight. And the tough thing about that area is not only was the enemy shooting at you, is that they had mines buried in the ground. We call them IEDs, improvised explosive devices. And so every time you take a step, you thought, this could be it. And you legitimately thought that I'm going to put my foot down, and there's a decent chance that my leg is not going to be there once I put my foot down.
Wow.
And we had 25 killed, 250 wounded. In the first 2 weeks, there was 14 killed, and it was all by these IEDs. And the rate that we were taking casualties, it just seemed that no one's going to make it out of here. And so what happened is the interpreters that I was working with kept quitting. They said, it doesn't matter what you're paying me, I'm not going to be alive to.
Yeah.
And so finally, Zach comes in about a week into the deployment, and he knows the local dialect really well because it's called Pashto. So he knows the local dialect. He actually speaks English really well, which was not always something guaranteed with the translators. And he's like fit, 19. He looks like he's ready to go out there. And yeah, he right away, he was different in just how talented and proficient he was at his duties as a translator. But within a very short time, it became evident that he was going to do so much more for us than just translate. And so, when I had a Marine get injured, Zach picks up the rifle and holds security. When we had radios that we can monitor what the Taliban were saying, and as we were approaching a village, Zach is telling me, hey, that they're setting up an ambush. You got to hurry up and get to this village before they can set it up. They're setting it up right now. Well, we would walk, or what we call patrol, in a single file line because there's mines everywhere. So you got a guy out in front with a metal detector sweeping for the mines, and basically everybody just walks behind him to reduce the amount of chances that you're going to hit this IED. And I'm like, I call up to the front. I'm like, hey, just so you know, ambush might be coming. But you can't ask that guy to walk any faster because those guys up front got killed and injured all the time. And so this mine detector that they're sweeping, this metal detector that they're sweeping, the mines in Afghanistan at that time actually were not metallic. They were non-metallic. So they didn't actually give off so the idea is you swing a metal detector over something, and when it's metal, it pings. Mm-hmm. Well, the mines weren't metallic. They were like, the red gas can jugs, and they would just pack that with explosives. So that's a plastic jug, and then like a wooden plate that you'd step on, and it would kind of initiate. And we don't need to get too technical, but either way, these guys are essentially walking with this metal detector, which more or less doesn't do anything for them. Yeah. And if they don't see it with their eyes, then they find it with their feet. And when they find it with their feet, it means they've lost their leg or they're dead. And so Zach is saying, we got to hurry up, or they're going to start the ambush on us. And I'm like, dude, we're going as fast as we can. He's like, not fast enough. He takes off through this unswept minefield that we knew there was multiple IDs in this area. He runs in the village. He knows, he's able to correlate what compound the guy was talking from, runs into that compound, tackles the guy, and detains him, waits for us to come up. And so this guy was clearly, someone who was willing to go well above and beyond the duties that were required of him, incredible courage. And he went from somebody that kind of just worked for us to somebody that was part of the platoon, part of the unit. And
because what this is obligation, it technically doesn't go beyond being like, hey, they're setting it up. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, he didn't have to say like, hey, hurry up. He didn't have to tackle that guy, right? Like, he just
translates. And so I mean, that is what I went on a second deployment, and that is generally what translators do. They would just say, this is what this person is saying. You go to speak to the local village person, elder, or people in the village, and they'll say, this is what this person is saying, and then I'll say, okay, here's what I want you to tell them. And that's fine. Like, that's their job. You don't expect people to do more than what their job is. It's just so happened that Zach was willing to do so much more.
Mm-hmm. And how is that decided, the guy who goes first with the metal detector?
Yeah, it's a profession called combat engineer. And so I'm an infantry guy, and so for hundreds of years the infantry were the ones doing the fighting, clearing the trenches and kicking in the doors. But historically, we've had what we call a combat engineer attached to our units, and those engineers are the guys that deal with the booby traps, the mines, like any of that kind of stuff, the explosives. And so in 2010, it was the most dangerous job in the world. The Kilo Company, so I was part of Kilo Company. A company of Marines has 150 infantrymen. They attached a squad of engineers to us, and a squad has 13. 12 of the 13 Marines in that squad that they attached to Kilo Company were killed or lost their legs.
Wow.
And I always talk about one of them, who I named my son after, Arden Benagua, Lance Corporal Arden Benagua, first generation American, both parents immigrants. And he was number 12. So before him, in a 3-month span, 11 of his friends that he came over with were killed or amputees from their injuries. And so when you're number 12 and everybody else in your squad has been blown up, you know it's not a matter of if, but when. And the title of this book is called Always Faithful, and I part of the reason I wrote it is to have an opportunity to talk about some of these men who were always faithful and who went out and walked point. And Arden Benagua every day grabbed his pack, grabbed his rifle, grabbed that metal detector, and walked to the front of the patrol, knowing that metal detector wasn't going to do anything for him, and knowing ultimately that one of those mines, one of those IEDs had his name on it. And this 19-year-old kid never once turned to me and said, sir, could it be somebody else's turn today? Or, sir, this is too dangerous. No. He grabbed his rifle and he went out every day knowing the outcome, knowing his fate, and did his job, and did it to the point that he no shit had his head blown off. And when I think of these 19-year-old kids that kept a promise, these 19-year-old kids that put the unit above themselves, it was important for me to be able to share their story. And Arden Benagua, I named my last son after him. He's a young man that taught me so much about commitment, about courage, and the book is full of stories about guys like Arden Benagua who were willing to keep a promise.
That's quite the honor to named your son after him and everything. So
yeah. So the book kind of culminates. So you're gonna the middle of the book is gonna kind of talk a little bit about combat and why Zach was so special to me.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you care about this guy so much? And you'll get some of that from the combat stories, and then I went back to Afghanistan. I fought for another year. Zach went to a different unit. He fought for 2 more years with the Army after he fought with the Marines. And basically one night the Army left overnight. They were there and then they weren't there. And because they were these special forces guys, and so they didn't leave a business card. They just disappeared. And then and so you get a little bit of our book post-war. We're both trying to adjust to our life after fighting, and you're going to get a little bit of that. But the thing is Zach was born into an Afghanistan that was at war, and his entire life has been impacted by the war in one way or another. And so even when Zach is not fighting, now he's a marked man because of his service to the U.S. So he's persecuted because the Taliban says, we know you, Zach. We know you served with the Marines. We know you served with the Army. And they started to leave night letters at his father's house saying, when we find you, we're going to cut your head off. And they would call him and say, we're looking for you. And when we find you, we're going to kill you. And so this guy not only took an immense amount of risk with us while he was fighting with us, he continued to be at risk and in danger and persecuted after we left. They created a program called the Special Immigration Visa Program, SIV, because it's clear that what's going to happen to our allies there, what's going to happen to our interpreters, that they're going to face persecution, that the Taliban is going to try to kill them. And so no one's going to want to work with you if they think they're just going to get killed after, And so what we did is we created this program. We said, if you serve with the U.S., we'll give you a visa and you can come to the U.S. and we'll provide a pathway to U.S. citizenship. Mm-hmm. And so the contract is very clear. You serve 12 months with the U.S., we'll take you to America, give you a visa. Pretty black and white. Zach served 4 years. He did a year with the Army before he did the Marines, then he did a year with the Marines, then he did 2 more years with the Army. So he exceeded the criteria by 4. And so he didn't join the Marines. He didn't do any of this kind of stuff because he wanted to leave his country. He always wanted a brighter, more prosperous, more free Afghanistan. That was always his motivation, why he joined to serve. It's because he saw that this is the best path for my country to have schools for girls, for my school to for my country to have governance, for my country to have hospitals. I'm going to hitch, my wagon to these guys because this is the path towards the brightest future for Afghanistan. It wasn't like I want to become their friend so I can go to their country. He loved Afghanistan, and you'll get that when you read the book. Mm-hmm. But by 2016, it became impossible for him to live there anymore. He couldn't leave his village. He couldn't work. The amount of persecution from the Taliban everywhere, they were looking for him. And he started to have a family, and he's like, this is no way to raise a family. I can't even leave my father's house. I can't even go. And so that's when he starts applying for this visa program. And he calls me and says, hey, I'm trying to get this visa. Can you give me the letter of recommendation? Help me. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so in 2016, we spend 12 months submitting these applications, denied. And then after 12 months, he says, look, I got to figure something out, but this is clearly not going to work. Mm-hmm. And so over the next couple of years, we stay in touch. And then the president makes an announcement in April of 2021 and says, the U.S. will be out of Afghanistan by the end of the summer. And so I sent Zach a message and I said, what does that mean to you, us being out by the end of the summer? He said, it means my family and I will be dead. We'll be killed. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to get busy here. And so I was teaching at the Naval Academy at the time, and I started to, and what I did is I had like a little bit of a decent social media presence, and I just put it out there, a 1-minute video. I said, hey, here's Zach. He was an interpreter with us. He's one of us. Zach will be killed by the end of the year. Can anybody help? And overwhelmingly, people wanted to help. Overwhelmingly, bipartisan, Democrat, Republicans, the media, you name it. People were reaching out and saying this, let's help, what can I do to help this guy? And so there was an incredible outpouring of support. Before, we ended up on the cover of the Chicago Sun-Times. You got Senator Durbin in the Secretary of State's confirmation hearing saying, Secretary, there's an article in the Chicago Sun-Times today about a Marine Major, Tom Schueman, and his interpreter. His interpreter is being persecuted. Can you give me your promise that you're going to help this interpreter get out of Afghanistan? And crazy enough, the Secretary of State says, I read the article. I know who you're talking about. I know the major. I'm going to help get this guy out. And it's like, okay, well, you've got Senator Durbin, like one of the senior senators. You've got the Secretary of the State. We should be good, And then Senator Duckworth, she's like, I'm going to help too. And it's like, okay, like my two senators are got my back, and then we end up on the cover of the New York Times. We're on the Daily podcast, where it's like, but no matter how much momentum we had, it was all false summits. It was always, you thought you're just there, and nothing changed. The amount of red tape to move these visa packages through was simply insurmountable. There was nothing we could do to move these packages forward. And even with the highest levels of attention in government, even with the highest levels of media support, Rachel Maddow cried telling her story. 10,000 people sent us emails and messages after Rachel Maddow cried. You think, okay, like this got everybody's attention. Nothing we were doing was actually moving the visa forward. And so I called my buddy who was in Afghanistan, who's a pilot, and I said, hey, is anybody going to go pick up our interpreters or going to tell them when they need to come to the airport to leave? And he's like, tell your interpreter if he's not at the airport, he's not getting out. And so I said, hey, you got to go. And this is something that up until I've heard, Zach and I just, did some interviews recently, and I hadn't considered this, but, think about Zach is leaving his home, a place his entire family has grown up in the same compound, in the same village. And he's leaving on a risk, on a hope, on a dream, because he's being persecuted. Imagine saying goodbye to your mom under those circumstances, thinking you're never going to see her again.
Yeah. Your
cousins, your father, and this, he's got 4 little kids at the time, and he's I mean, I can't imagine just that departure, how tough that would have been, saying goodbye to your mom, thinking you'll never see her again. You could be dead, she could be dead, or if you make it, it's not likely you're going to be able to come back. And so just that departure, I think I often haven't thought about, but now that I've heard Zach talk about it, it must have been so hard. They get to Kabul, and we think we've got to the end of the month. This is August of 2021. He gets to Kabul, and we're like, okay, we got about 20 days to keep doing this paperwork, keep getting attention to your story. And August 15th, he was trying to get his wife's passport, and Kabul fell to the Taliban. And Taliban immediately started killing interpreters and allies and ANA soldiers. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to get out today. And I knew a buddy of mine who was working security at the gate, and a Marine from 1-8, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. And I said, hey, I'm going to send my buddy. I need you to get him and his family into the airport. And then I got another friend who'll get him on a plane. And he's like, okay, send him. So Zach's got to walk close to 4 miles with 4 kids, 4 bags. If anyone has ever traveled, who's listening to this, who's traveled with small children, if you can imagine walking 4 miles with 4 suitcases, and all the kids are under 5, and gets to the airport, and right when he gets to the airport is when the airport got overran. So everybody saw those images last year of people running on the tarmac, people jumping on the planes, and like people hanging onto the wings.
Yeah.
That's when he got to the airport.
Jeez.
And so they closed all the gates. My buddy's obviously very busy trying to regain control of the airport. And at this point, the U.S. was working with the Taliban to hold the security around the airport, which, just thinking about that is kind of mind blowing. And the Taliban, to get crowd control, was just shooting into the crowd. And so his little kids saw someone get mowed down with a machine gun right next to them, and he walks back that night, and it was a 12-hour ordeal with his family. And I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry that let's we're gonna try again tomorrow. And so I get a guy. You can't call an Uber there, you can't call a taxi or anything. So a connection of mine is like, hey, I know a guy. He's willing to drive his family to the airport tomorrow. And so I'm like, hey, you got to go back. You got to try again. And same thing. I talked to my buddy. He's like, okay, send him to this gate at this time. So they go to the airport a second time. And while they're there, the guy who drove them to the airport, his name was Malad. The Taliban went to Malad's house and said, we know you're supporting, people who worked with the U.S. They killed his father-in-law while this guy is driving Zach to the airport. This time, Zach gets right up to the gate, and he's sending pictures of Marines. And he's like, I'm right next to these Marines. I'm yelling, I know Major Schueman. I'm yelling and no one's letting me in. And it was just, again, this bad timing where right when he got there, the security started to get breached again, and they just clamped everything down. And And so he sends me this video on the second attempt, and his daughter is sitting in his lap, and he's saying, Major Schueman, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. They won't let me in. I'm telling them I know you. And just please help me. Please tell me what to do. And as he's saying this, the machine gun fire starts over their head, and he's got his daughter in his lap, and she starts screaming and hugging him and crying. And I have a daughter the same age, and I'm just thinking, like, God almighty, like, as a dad, to be putting my children, that's the kind of desperation that these people were facing, that they'd be willing to bring. I can't imagine a situation that I would bring my children into an environment like that. But that's how desperate it was there. And his daughter's screaming and crying, and I'm talking my daughter into bed at the same time I'm watching this video and looking at her, and just absolutely, heartbreaking. And so after the second attempt, his wife says, why did you bring me to the airport to get killed? We could have just been killed in our home. At least, we would have been more comfortable before we got killed. You bring me out here, and now these kids are going to get trampled. There's machine guns every day. She's like, we got to go back. And again, just thinking about how to be a husband, to be a man of the family, to be like, and it's all uncertain. It's all bad options. There was never a good, clean option. There was never like, oh, well, just do this. Like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's in this kind of scenario, you just have to pick the least bad option. And that's a tough place to be. And so I said, hey, you got to go back. And he's like, no, like, I'm not going back unless someone's going to come out and get me, unless And so we came up with three different courses of action for the third evacuation attempt. And one was like a super secret one. The second one was, hey, go to this gate, give a password, and they're going to let you in. Like, we were pretty solid on that. There's a gate that if you gave a certain password, they were letting people in that day. And then the third option was like, hey, just try to link up with my buddy again, who's holding security.
And so every time he's going 4 miles?
He got driven the second time,
Okay.
And the driver, like I said, the driver's father-in-law was killed while they were driving. And then he managed to find a driver the third time. But when they were going to the airport, they had to go through these Taliban checkpoints. And the Taliban was now only letting people who worked with the U.S. through the checkpoints, because they basically made an agreement with the U.S. that, hey, if people have good paperwork, like if you can see that people worked with the U.S., let them through so that we can try to evacuate them. But if they can't demonstrate that they've worked with the U.S., don't let them through these checkpoints that would get to the airport. Now imagine Zach, who the last 10 years the Taliban's been trying to kill him because he worked with the U.S. And now he gets stopped, at the checkpoint on the street, and he's got to say, like, here are my papers. I worked with.
Dude.
And so he's got to trust that these people aren't going to kill him. And so he found a ride the second 2 times, and so he gets there on the third attempt, and he can't get to the gate that I told him he needs to get to with the secret password. And the Taliban have that area blocked, and they're not letting anybody through no matter what. And he's like, I can't get to where you're telling me to go. And I'm like, shit. And he's like, look, the crowds are pressing all over my kids. The crowds are going crazy. He's like, you need to have someone come get me. I'm like, Zach, if I could have someone come and get you, I would have had someone come get you. Like, I don't think I can do that. And so I call my buddy, who's an Air Force pilot. He was initially a Marine. He did an inter-service transfer into the Air Force, and he was flying helicopters there. And I said, hey, I need you to go get my buddy. And he's like, I'm in the operations center. It's not authorized for me to leave. I can't be going out. And I'm like, hey, I need you to keep a promise that we made to this guy and his family. And I need you to, even if it means getting in some trouble, I need you to go out. He's like, send me a picture. So I sent him a picture of Zach and his family from that morning. And he's like, I'm gonna grab some guys and I'll go get them. And I'll try. He had not done this up to that point. And he jumps up on the wall, tens of thousands of people, all screaming, all pressing, all trying to show their papers. and he sends a message. It's me, him, and Zach in a group WhatsApp text, and he says, Zach, put your son with the blue shirt on your shoulders. And at that point, Zach couldn't send any messages. His phone was dead. Or it had a little bit, but it couldn't get any messages through. And then he sends another message. Zach, put your son with the blue shirt on your shoulders. And then nothing for an hour and a half. And I've been on tough missions before, and the worst thing you could do is have somebody like be like, "What's going on? Tell me what." And you just be like, that's like, I need to handle this right now. I don't want anybody in my shit. And so I tried to give him that space to work his mission. But I'll tell you, like, that hour and a half of radio silence, that hour and a half of, I had no idea what had happened.
Yeah.
And next thing I received an hour and a half later is we got him, and send a picture of him and his crew and Zach and his family in front of a Saturdays Are for the Boys picture that they had in their CSC. And I posted that to Instagram. It like got 19,000 likes, in like the first hour. So it's cool to have a little Barstool connection there. And so, yeah, they pulled the family in. It took a long time. It took they had to go to Qatar, then they had to go to Germany, then they went to Philadelphia, then they went to Virginia, then they went to Minneapolis. But finally, Zach had a cousin in San Antonio, and he's finally got down to San Antonio, getting settled. He still doesn't have his visa, but he's safe. He's got he works construction. He hangs drywall at a cancer hospital 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. He's working. He just had his 5th kid while we were in New York.
Wow.
We were in New York last week, and when I ran into you, and he had his 5th. He had a son, so he's got 2 sons and 3 daughters. So yeah, it's that's what the book is about. It's about our journey. It's about growing up in Chicago. It's about friendship that's born in combat, and then about really trying to keep a promise to our friend.
And have you ever got any more clarity on why things just were taking so long?
Yeah, it all comes down to an HR letter. Zach, the Marines. He has 9 months of verified service with the Marines in an HR letter. His time with the Army Special Forces, which was about 2 years, we couldn't get a letter from those guys because, again, they kind of disappeared overnight, and they're not guys that use their like real names and even wear uniforms generally. And so we couldn't get a hold of those guys, and so it was because there was a 3-month gap of basically service that they wanted to be able to verify. And it's like, even with me saying that for 9 months this guy almost died and has been persecuted for 10 years, could we find a way to just cover him for the 3 months and still let him? It's like nope. And so we finally, during this big push last summer, I got connected with some guys that had served in his province during that time, and Zach had a picture with some dudes. Again, they're not wearing uniforms; they're wearing like local tribal clothes. But I sent that picture to some dudes who said, "Oh, I know who that guy is in that picture." And now Zach has actually a letter of support verifying his time with those guys for 2 years, and his package still got denied. So that one was confusing. It's currently, we're on his last appeal. And if he doesn't get this last appeal, he's facing deportation. And, we just did Good Morning America last week, and George Stephanopoulos said, "What happens if you get deported?" And Zach said one word: dead. So we're doing whatever we can to make sure that this is a successful appeal. This is a guy who is more American than most Americans through his ideals and the commitment to this country. And now he's trying to live out the American dream and put down his roots and work hard and hang drywall in Texas. Like, this is doing the jobs that no one else wants to do. And this is a guy that is such an asset and so valuable to our country. And I hope we get this worked out.
Yeah, I hope so too. And is there like an element too where he was so hell bent on trying to make Afghanistan a better place? Like, was it bothersome to him that he wasn't like, obviously he made a mark, but that he had to leave. Like, how is he taking that?
That was another thing that kind of was revelatory to me recently, because we were doing an interview and someone asked like a similar question. He says, the fall of Afghanistan was the worst day of my life. So, no ambiguity, objectively, this was the worst day of my life. And this is a guy who had sacrificed so much for his country and who had put so much into seeing his country have a brighter future, and who values education and who values having like certain liberties and freedoms. And no one wanted a successful Afghanistan more than Zach. He had bled for the country, he had fought for the country. And when he said that the fall of my country was the worst day of my life, I was like, yeah, I mean, that would be the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
It would be the worst day of my life. And so, yeah, it's all tragic, because his children grew up in the same house with their grandparents, with their uncles, with their cousins. And so he's like, my kids every day say, when can I see my grandma again? When can I see my grandpa? I want to see my cousins. And it's like, it's got to be tough. It's sad. And then to top it off, I mean, the country is in the middle of a dire situation with poverty, with hunger. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
That day, and it makes me think of all the people who, work with people like Zach, and we're just kind of screwed. Just kind of left him out to dry, it feels like.
Yeah, so over 90% of the people who were eligible for the program were left. So there's 87,000 Afghans who are eligible for the program who are still in Afghanistan, and many of them have been executed.
87,000.
Yep, and their families are also eligible, which brings that number up to about 150,000 when you include their families.
I mean, I feel like this is not talked about enough. I don't know. I mean, obviously, this is what you've been doing, these past couple of weeks, and with the book and everything. But like, just as like a regular American citizen, it's crazy.
Yeah, as a country, we got to keep our promises. We gotta keep our promises, because in every conflict we've needed allies.
Yeah.
And if in the next big fight, let's say if you go to the Pacific, you're going to need friends there. And if people can't trust you to keep your word, they're not going to want to fight alongside you. And it's not a good look to not keep your promises as a nation. You lose the moral high ground. You compromise your integrity. And so it is a stain on our honor. And yeah, I think like you're saying, most people may not be aware, but maybe they'll pick up Always Faithful, and they'll learn a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, and it's where is it available at?
Yeah, everywhere you buy books. It's in Target. It's in
Amazon.
It's at Barnes and Nobles. One more Chicago story, maybe on a lighter note to close it out.
Yeah, of course.
So I when I was at Loyola, I pushed carts at Costco. So I back in
it's a good job. They say Costco is like one of the best.
Yeah. So people love, every time you talk about Costco, the people always will go to the
right. So
so let me get this and we'll see.
All right.
Because I have for the longest time maintained that position, that I have a lot of love and loyalty for Costco. So I worked at 73rd and Cicero at the Bedford Park Costco, and which was rough because I worked there Saturday morning I opened at 8 to 4, and then Sunday 8 to 4, and I would drive from Loyola, and as you can imagine, Friday night I was probably up pretty late. Saturday night I was up pretty late. My academics suffered. Probably took a couple of years off my life with that schedule. But I started on carts, and then I got to go. I almost got fired before I even started. Like my first week at Costco, they called and they're like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "I told you guys I was getting my wisdom teeth pulled, and I got my wisdom teeth pulled. I was a soup sandwich. I had everything was impacted, not clotting, just bleeding, like mess. And they're like, well, you had work today and you didn't come to work. I'm like if you're not at work tomorrow, you don't have a job. So my first day at Costco, I'm looking like a chipmunk, just drooling blood out of my mouth, pushing. You know how big those carts are? They're big carts.
Oh yeah, the Costco cart,
Yes.
of course, yeah.
It's a big cart.
And they got the pole ones too, where you just throw everything on top, you know?
And they're all over. And it was summer with those carts. You know, they keep like a door ticker, like 500 people come in the door an hour. So that means 500 carts coming out, you know, and just this guy out there drooling blood, pushing these carts all over the freaking, that was rough. It was a rough start. And then what's worse than pushing carts in the summer is pushing carts in the winter. Because now they're sliding everywhere, skeet, snow, like it's brutal pushing carts in the winter. You know, a great litmus test of a person's character is what they do with their shopping cart. You can assume a person who doesn't put their cart away is not a good person.
Can I fire back at that?
Yeah, send it.
Tell me what you think about this.
Yeah.
So my mom's worked at Jewel for 47 years, 48 years.
Great.
Long time, since she was 16.
My grandma worked at Jewel.
Yeah, and I mean, she says it kind of in jest, but she always says that people who leave the carts around, though, that also creates job security for these people. So that's my counterpoint.
The carts still have to go from the cart corral.
They do
to the front door.
They do,
and so the Costco wasn't hiring any additional. Costco needed someone to get the carts from the corral back to the front door, and so but they don't pay me extra to go chase your cart. That's
fair.
That's a good farthest corner of the parking lot.
That's a strong rebuttal.
Something I often had to do.
Yeah.
So until the robots are retrieving the carts from the cart corral and bringing them, you know, I think that the cart boys' job security is good. And then when people, you know, what they'll do is they'll think they're helping you out and they'll put it like up on the curb or like, and now you just made my life 10 times. Yeah. Now I'm trying to drag this big ass cart off this. I could tell cart war stories all day. I don't think that's that interesting. After the winter, I went into the, like as soon as a spot opened in the tire shop, I jumped on that, and that was a lot of fun. That's like, you feel like real purpose in like a man when you work in a tire shop.
Yeah.
You know, someone brings you something, it's like, hey, this thing's all fucked up. And it's like, okay, I can fix that.
I got it.
And it's like, you take this thing that was damaged, you assess it, you patch it up, and you say, here's this thing that now it's all better. It's very satisfying work. I loved working in the tire shop. I was the only white guy. But on one of my breaks, I had a 15-minute break, a buddy, I brought his tire in to the shop, patched it, and rolled it out. And they said, oh, you can't patch your buddy's tire. I did it on my break. It's about 5 cents worth of material, a patch and a rubber plug. And they're like, you got to go back on carts. And it was the winter. It was my senior year. I've been working there for 4 years. I was like, I'm going to go on military leave. And so I was able to go on military leave at the time, which I'm still on military leave.
For Costco?
Yes.
I mean, we need one last, it's like a 1-day contract, you know?
Yeah.
He's going back to retire with the Bears.
So
we need you to go back, 1-day contract with Costco.
It's in the book. I write about, I hope that maybe when I retire that my job I'll go back to working on tires in Costco. Getting the hot dog or the slice of pizza and the drink during my lunch break at Costco. These were great times. Getting after it in the tire shop. The fact that they've allowed me to stay on military leave for 14 years,
it's pretty incredible.
Little salty that my publisher is HarperCollins, and they pitched the book to Costco, and they're like, here's an excerpt where he writes glowingly about his time in the tire shop and how he loves Costco. And Costco passed on the book.
No, come on.
Target's got it. My cousin says that every Target she goes to, they're selling out of the copies. Target can't keep the copies. I'm like,
this is bullshit. We got a guy. Do you know who Rico Bosco is?
Yeah.
He's a legendary grudge guy. I think he might have to bring up a new grudge with Costco now until we get this book in Costco.
I'm a little salty. I was like, felt a little betrayed. I'm the brand loyalty. I push Costco on everybody. Sam's Club, no way, right? Gotta go Costco. This
is fucked up.
And how many Costco employees have books published by HarperCollins? You said how many books from Mount Greenwood guys. It's like, and then the glowing reviews of Costco in the book, and Target picks it up, but Costco doesn't.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Make it right, Costco.
All right.
Moral of the story. Pick up the book.
Yeah. This was the venue that I felt like I can get that story out there. So I appreciate you bringing me on today.
That's, we should have led with this.
Yeah.
This is the key thing here.
If you're going to chop up the social medias,
that's what we want. Yeah. We want Costco to know to make it right. Yeah. Or you'll just come back and you'll be a shitty employee. How about that? You'll just be not picking up any carts.
Yeah.
Just throwing them all over the damn parking lot.
There we go.
Are you going to be sad when the robots take that over? Like bittersweet, kind of?
I mean, it's like inevitable.
Yeah.
Like everything. Like robots are going to drive the trucks. Robots are going to.
It's crazy.
So it's all coming. But
the robot shit overseas was crazy too, right? I had a buddy who served in like the drones and like the infrared and stuff like that. That shit's wild.
Yeah, we can. I'll just, before we get off pushing carts, I'll say it builds character.
Yeah,
it's a good thing for someone who's 16 and hasn't done anything hard yet.
Yeah.
It's good, except a lot of these places have little like assist robots, so like the person still is behind it, but the little assist robot kind of does all the pushing. You got to get rid of that. You got to just go ahead and push the carts, because I do think that in many of these places, whether you're in the let's say you're like in Louisiana and it's July and you're pushing carts, you're learning something about yourself.
For sure, same thing. If you're in Chicago and it's January and you're pushing carts, like you're one of the fucking some of the most respect I can give in this city, right?
And so I do think it's I hope it's one of the later ones to go extinct. Yeah, I mean. We've got drones, we've got ISR, we call it I don't know, something surveillance and reconnaissance. These eyes in the sky. It was cool on my second deployment. I was what's called a JTAC, and basically I was dropping bombs on people. I could say these words called the two words cleared hot. And when you can say the words cleared hot, that means that the aircraft is allowed to release their munitions. And so you buy the bomb. And so in order to do that, you have to go through a bunch of training, because there's obviously a lot of risk and damage at the bottom of that. And so what I had is this kind of cool little camera that I got to, as a monocle, and I got to flip up and I got to see what the aircraft or the drones would see as they were flying. So like, I'm on the ground, the Taliban is shooting at me, from my front, and I'm getting the feed top down of what they're looking at in the infrared, and I kind of see these guys moving around day or night, and that was kind of a cool little thing that I had. But
technology, man, shit's wild. But yeah, that's it's quite the story, man. I'm excited to check the book out. So you said you could find it anywhere, and then anything else to plug? What's the Instagram and everything? I know you've got a good following there too.
Yeah, you can. I started a veteran nonprofit called Patrol Base Abate, so pbabate.org or pbabate on Instagram, and then my page is called Killzone, KILL.Z0N3. A little bit more intense than I probably would prefer it these days, but I started it from a place to kind of talk about ambushes and how everybody in life has trauma or an ambush. And what we call that place where you get ambushed in the military is the kill zone. And so I wanted to talk about how can we be resilient when life ambushes you.
Yeah.
Everybody has their ambush. or will have one, and then how can we recover when that thing, and so I titled it Killzone KILL.Z0N3. That's where I posted a lot of Zach's stuff to kind of get the attention. And so, yeah, check that out.
Well, that's great, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for representing Chicago and the USA, man.
Thanks, man. Semper Fi. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And you getting some Palermos this weekend? What'd you get?
Yeah, I just had it actually last night. And
there we go. I had to sneak that in before
and
the end.
oh, shit. 63rd and Lawndale. It's where I asked my wife to marry me. I brought the ring there, and this was like pretty good, expensive ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it there and left it with the girl at the register because I didn't want my wife to see me walking in with anything in my pockets. And I'm like, hey, I'm coming back here with my wife to propose. Can you hold on to this for me? and I gave the girl the ring, and I left. And then we came back, we're getting the pizza, and I come out and I asked her to marry me. And she's like, where was the ring? I was like, the girl at the front register had it. And she's like, you gave her a $20,000 ring and you don't know? I was like,
that's a crazy
you
person
gonna marry
move.
Like, I'm trying to ask you to marry me right now. You're yelling at me that like the ring's here, so it worked out. Her mom used to sing at the weddings for the Palermos folks.
Oh, really?
So like their family friends were all right.
But you gotta godfather that. Get some duct tape, tape it under the bathroom toilet or something, man.
Yeah.
You can't be trusting, someone, that's their last day on the job. See you later. Thanks for the ring. He's going to get a large cheese, half sausage, and he's going to have a fucking $20,000 ring. That's it.
Yep. It was maybe not advisable.
That is very funny, though.
But
hey, that you trust your people.
Yeah,
you trust your people on the south side.
Sweet sauce.
Yeah. No, let me know whenever you're home, man. We'll chop it up. We'll talk carts. We'll do whatever. So go check out the book. And then it's also, I should say, is there anything else, too, to help those 80,000 plus people?
Yeah, write your congressman.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's all.
Continue to advocate. Say, hey, America made a promise. Let's keep our promise.
Yeah. And I have a friend too who is going through the same thing, and he was kind of funding the process over there,
Yep.
and he's still trying. And the last time I talked to him, he's trying to set up a GoFundMe. So I'm going to post that in the description here if anyone would like to help out. That'd be great.
Sure.
So
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks again, man. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time.